This is who you really are, Lucas, a traitor. Anna shouted, her voice as sharp as a blade. The people around them began to murmur, some with expressions of shock, others with disapproval. Lucas stood paralyzed, his face red with shame and anger. You can't do this. You can't expose me like this. He looked around, realizing that the empathy he used to receive had now turned into reproach. I can and I will, because this is my truth, the truth I finally accepted. From today, I choose to be free, Anna declared, her voice echoing in the silence. At that moment, she felt Alex's arm around her, a gesture of support that made her feel unshakable. The applause began to sound, first hesitant, then in warm applause. Anna smiled, her heart light and full of hope. Lucas, isolated and ashamed, turned and left the gallery, defeat written on his face. Anna watched as he disappeared into the night, feeling stronger than ever. She had freed herself from her emotional chains and was ready to embrace a new beginning alongside Alex, who looked at her with admiration and affection. You did it, Anna. I'm so proud of you, he said, holding her hands. And at that moment, Anna knew she had found not only freedom, but also the opportunity to love herself and others in a genuine and true way. Now that you've heard this intriguing story, think, how many times have you ignored clear signs that something was wrong out of fear of facing the truth? The lesson here is that behind appearances, there may be hidden truths that need to be uncovered. Don't forget to pay attention to the details and question what seems right. And if this story made you reflect, take advantage and click on the video that is now appearing on your screen. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you liked what you just heard, you'll undoubtedly love this other story as well. So, subscribe to the channel, click on the video that's on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds. When she arrived at the cafe where Jake usually met his friends, he was sitting at a table, laughing and chatting animatedly. When he saw her, Jake smiled and Sarah felt a small relief, but it was soon overshadowed by suspicion. What was he hiding? She approached, trying to control the inner turmoil as doubt consumed her. Hi, love, you look beautiful, Jake exclaimed, standing up to kiss her. The touch of her lips with his was like an electric shock. We need to talk, Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. Jake looked at her, immediately sensing that something was wrong. Sure, what's going on? I found this in your backpack, she said, showing the card. Jake's smile instantly faded. What does this mean, Jake? The question came out as a whisper, but the impact was like a scream. Jake hesitated, his eyes reflecting surprise and confusion. Sarah, he began, but the words failed him. The tension in the air was palpable, and Sarah felt that the truth was about to emerge. But what would that truth be? Sarah felt her heart race with every step she took towards the cafe where Jake usually met his friends. The suspicion consuming her wouldn't leave her in peace, and the idea that he might be cheating on her made her restless. Jake's backpack and the motel card were still fresh in her mind, like an unbearable echo of distrust. This was the first time she allowed herself to investigate his life so directly, and the adrenaline of being in uncharted territory left her both excited and terrified. She settled into a corner table at the cafe, watching every movement around her. The place was full of young people, laughing and chatting, but her eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for Jake to appear. As she waited, she couldn't help but notice a group of his friends on the other side of the room. Among them was a woman with curly hair and a captivating smile, who seemed to have a special connection with Jake. Sarah frowned, a mixture of jealousy and curiosity taking hold of her. When Jake finally entered, he was laughing and chatting animatedly, but the joy on his face disappeared when he noticed Sarah sitting there. He approached, a little hesitant. Hi, love, what are you doing here? His voice had a tone of surprise that Sarah couldn't ignore. I just wanted to see how you were. I missed you, she replied, forcing a smile. Her heart was in turmoil, and she knew she needed to be careful. She didn't want him to realize her true intention. That's great. I was thinking about you too, Jake said, sitting across from her. The conversation flowed naturally, but the presence of the mysterious woman distracted him. Sarah couldn't shake the disturbing thoughts. Who is that? She asked, discreetly pointing to the woman who was with Jake's friends. Oh, that's Emily. She's new to the group. Really nice. Jake replied, not giving it much importance. The way he spoke seemed casual, but Sarah felt there was more to it. His expression wasn't the same when he talked about her. Cool. It seems like you have a lot of fun with your group of friends, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice neutral. You never told me much about them. Jake smiled, but the light in his eyes wasn't the same. It's because we don't have much in common. They're very different from us, but we get along. Jake's evasive answer made her even more suspicious. Sarah decided she needed more information about Emily. The way Jake spoke about her awakened a protective instinct within her. Have you gotten to know her well? What does she do? Jake hesitated for a moment, and Sarah didn't miss it. Oh, she works in marketing. I don't know much more than that. He looked away, as if he was more interested in a conversation at the next table. Sarah's unease grew. Do you feel comfortable with her? The question slipped out of her mouth before she could think twice. It was a direct question, but Jake's response made her stomach turn. Of course, she's just a friend. You know I love you, right? Jake smiled, but there was a hesitation in his gaze that Sarah couldn't ignore. Yes, I know, she replied, but her confidence was starting to crumble. After exchanging some trivial conversation, Jake suggested they leave. Sarah hesitated, but the idea of continuing in that situation bothered her. Shall we take a walk? He pulled her out of the cafe, but as they walked, the image of Emily wouldn't leave her mind. That night, lying in her bed, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Jake's secret meetings. What else could he be hiding? The need to uncover the truth consumed her, and the idea of confronting Jake again became increasingly irresistible. The doubt grew like a shadow, and Sarah knew that to feel free, she would have to confront not only Jake, but also that woman who seemed to have a special connection with him. Determined, she decided that the next step would be to talk to Emily. If there was any truth behind Jake's actions, she was willing to discover it all, even if it meant diving into a world of lies and betrayals. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and notes she had made about Emily. The soft light of the lamp illuminated her face, but couldn't warm the coldness that invaded her inside. With every line she wrote, the image of Jake laughing and chatting with the woman at the bar replayed in her mind, cutting her like a sharp knife. Doubt and distrust became a shadow that wouldn't leave her alone. What else is he hiding from me? She thought, feeling the anger grow inside her. That night, she decided she needed to know more about Emily. The woman with her mysterious ways and enigmatic smile seemed too close to Jake. Sarah knew she couldn't let herself be swayed by unfounded jealousy, but the idea that the woman might be occupying a place that was hers consumed her. With her phone in hand, she started searching the internet, trying to find any information that could reveal more about Emily's past. After a few clicks, she found a blog post that talked about complicated relationships. The author mentioned a broken heart and how living with secrets was painful. Sarah read every word, identifying with the pain expressed there. But at the end of the text, something caught her attention, a mention of a past relationship of Emily's that had ended tumultuously. At least now I know she's not perfect, Sarah thought, feeling a small wave of satisfaction as she realized that the woman tormenting her also had her weaknesses. Determined to gather more information, Sarah decided it was time to act. The next day, with a determined air, she got ready and went to the cafe where Jake usually met his friends. It wasn't her style to spy, but the need to uncover the truth was greater. When she entered the place, her heart was pounding, and she looked around, trying to locate Jake and his friends. And then, there he was, sitting at a table, his loud, contagious laugh that Sarah always loved echoing through the air. But his smile faded when she noticed Emily was by his side, leaning towards him in a way that seemed too intimate. How can he be so carefree, she thought, feeling a sharp pain in her chest. The image of Jake and Emily together felt like a punch to the stomach, and she felt paralyzed for a moment. As she watched, she saw Jake place his hand on Emily's shoulder, a gesture that made her lose control. I can't stay here, she murmured to herself, abruptly turning and leaving the cafe. The walk back home seemed endless, and each step was heavy with the certainty that the life she knew was falling apart. When she got home, Sarah threw herself on the couch, confusion flooding her. What do I do now? She asked herself. The only thing that seemed clear was that she needed answers. The investigation that had started as a simple suspicion had now become a personal mission. She couldn't continue living like this, with uncertainty gnawing at her sanity. I need to confront him again, she decided, feeling a new surge of determination. But this time, it wouldn't just be a conversation. Sarah wanted to be prepared, with evidence and questions that would leave no room for evasions. She knew she needed the truth, no matter how painful it was. As the night wore on, the plan took shape in her mind, and the anger she felt towards Jake and Emily turned into a driving force. The time had come to face reality, and Sarah wouldn't hesitate to fight for her heart. Sarah was determined to uncover the truth, and to do so, she decided to set a plan in motion. The idea of a romantic dinner came up as an effective strategy to catch Jake in a lie. With trembling hands from anxiety, she prepared the apartment with candles and flowers, creating a cozy atmosphere that contrasted with the storm of emotions growing inside her. The smell of dinner, a special dish Jake loved, filled the air, but Sarah could barely enjoy the meal. When Jake arrived, his smile lit up the room, but Sarah noticed the superficiality of that gesture. He greeted her with a loving kiss, but she felt the connection was distant, as if a chasm separated them. As Jake sat at the table, Sarah tried to focus on the questions she had rehearsed in her mind. Her heart was pounding, and each bite seemed to last an eternity. "You look lovely tonight," Jake complimented as he poured the wine. "Thank you," she replied, forcing a smile. "I made your favorite dish. I'm really hungry. What did you make?" The conversation flowed in a superficial way, with Jake talking about work and his recent achievements. Sarah listened, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the question she needed to ask. After a few minutes, she took a deep breath and decided it was time. "Jake, you've been seeing Emily, haven't you?" The question hung in the air like a weight. Jake hesitated, his gaze faltering for a moment. "Emily? Oh, she's just a friend, Sarah. You know how things are. Work, these meetings." Sarah felt a wave of frustration. He was dodging, and that made her even more determined. "But you seem to have a lot of fun with her." "I saw you at the bar that day," Sarah said, forcing herself to keep her voice calm. Jake fell silent for a moment, and the tension between them grew. He looked away as if trying to find a way out. "Look, it's not what you're thinking. Emily is just a colleague. There's nothing between us," he said, but the hesitation in his voice was evident. "So why didn't you tell me about her before?" Sarah asked, her voice firm but her heart breaking. "I found a motel card in your backpack, Jake." The words came out like a blow, and Jake's face turned pale. Anger took over him, and he got up from the table, slamming his hand on the surface. "You're accusing me of something absurd. You're so paranoid," he shouted, the fury evident in his eyes. Sarah felt the adrenaline rise. He was defending himself aggressively, but she wouldn't be intimidated. "I'm not being paranoid, Jake. I just want the truth," she replied, keeping her composure despite the internal storm. Silence fell. The corner of Jake's mouth twitched in disdain, and he ran his hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "You don't understand, do you? You're making a big deal out of a card." "A card that represents something much bigger," Sarah insisted. "If you have nothing to hide, why can't you be honest with me?" The tension became palpable. The dinner, which once promised to be a night of reconciliation, was now turning into a minefield. Sarah felt her heart tighten, but the determination to know the truth was stronger than any pain. "I don't know what you want to hear, Sarah," Jake said, his voice now lower but still full of anger. "I can't control your insecurities." Sarah took a deep breath, trying not to get carried away by the wave of emotions. She knew the conversation was going nowhere. She needed concrete answers, not evasions. "So, what do you have to say about the card?" she asked, locking eyes with him. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to fail him. A deafening silence filled the room. And Sarah realized that his frustration was a reflection of his own guilt. The truth was there between them, but Jake was refusing to face it. As the night dragged on, Sarah felt more and more lost. The love she once felt for Jake now seemed like a mirage, and the trust they had built over time was crumbling before her eyes. She knew she needed more than just words to believe in him again. The revelation of the card had cast a shadow over everything she believed in. and the idea that Jake might be hiding something consumed her. "I can't go on like this, Jake," she said, her voice now softer, almost broken. "If you don't tell me the truth, I don't know if I'll be able to trust you again." Jake looked at her, and for a moment it seemed like he was about to give in. But instead he turned away, frustrated, and walked away from the table, leaving Sarah alone in the devastating silence of her uncertainties. In a cozy cafe, decorated with rustic wooden tables and soft lighting, Sarah anxiously awaited Laura. The young woman's mind was in turmoil, full of doubts and insecurities. As soon as Laura entered, with her warm smile and wind-tousled hair, Sarah felt a wave of relief. Laura sat across from her with a concerned look. "Hi, friend. How are you?" Laura asked, observing Sarah's eyes, which were heavy with sadness. "I don't know, Laura. I found more things about Jake, and with each new piece of information, it feels like my world crumbles more," Sarah replied, her voice choked. Laura took Sarah's hand, squeezing it lightly. "You need to be strong. You can't let him control your emotions. You need answers, and I think you should talk to Emily again." Sarah hesitated. "What more could I ask? She already deceived me once. What if she lies again?" "But what if she tells you the truth? Sometimes people have a different perspective. She might not have intended to hurt you," Laura suggested, encouraging. Sarah took a deep breath, considering her friend's words. "Maybe you're right. I just don't know if I'm ready to hear more lies." "Only you can decide that. But if you want to know the truth, you need to go with courage. And if you need me, I'll be here," Laura reassured, convincing Sarah to move forward. With her heart racing, Sarah decided she would talk to Emily once more. Soon, she would find answers, even if those answers were painful. After saying goodbye to Laura, Sarah headed to the bar where Emily usually went. The place was lit with a soft amber light, and the sound of laughter and music filled the air. Upon spotting Emily at a secluded table, Sarah felt a mix of anger and fear. The woman was engrossed in an animated conversation with a group of friends. With a bit of hesitation, Sarah approached. "Emily, can we talk?" Her voice sounded firmer than she felt. Emily looked up, surprised, but her expression quickly turned more serious. "Sure, Sarah. What do you need?" "I need answers. I know about you and Jake. I need to understand what's going on," Sarah said, trying to stay calm despite the emotional turmoil. "Look, I didn't want to hurt you, but the truth is, I have a relationship with Jake," Emily said, with a look that mixed compassion and regret. "So everything he told me was a lie? He promised me we were special, that I was the only one," Sarah responded, her voice trembling. "It's not that simple. Jake, he's using you. I didn't want this to happen, but he's not what you think. He's not loyal to anyone," Emily confessed, looking into Sarah's eyes. Sarah's heart raced. The pain of betrayal was almost unbearable, but there was a strange release in hearing the truth. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "You knew I was trying to figure all this out," Sarah fired back, her voice choked. "I didn't want to get involved, but Jake has always been manipulative. He knows how to deceive people and make them seem crazy. I just didn't want to get more involved than that," Emily explained, her expression full of regret. "So you really think he's just using me?" Sarah asked, her gaze fixed on the woman in front of her. "Yes, and I'm sorry for you. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you need to protect yourself. You deserve someone who truly loves you," Emily affirmed, the sincerity in her tone undeniable. Sarah felt a mix of anger and sadness, but above all, a growing determination. "I can't stay silent anymore. I need to confront Jake and decide what to do with this pain," she declared, her voice now strong. Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Do what you think is best. I'll be here if you need support, but don't let yourself be deceived again." With a new sense of purpose, Sarah left the bar. Each step she took felt lighter, as if she were shedding an unbearable weight. She knew she needed to take action. The betrayal would hurt for a while, but the truth now drove her. And with that, plans for revenge began to form in her mind, making her stronger and more determined not to be a victim. The sun was slowly setting on the horizon, painting the sky with a vibrant orange hue, as Sarah headed to the park where Jake used to take her during the happiest moments of their relationship. The place had a nostalgic aura, but today it was just a cold and distant setting, a reminder of what once was. Her heart was racing, not just because of the cool weather, but because of the anticipation and anger consuming her. She knew this was the decisive moment, the confrontation she could no longer postpone. When she arrived, Jake was waiting, sitting on one of the wooden benches they both loved. He looked at her with an involuntary smile, but when he noticed the tense expression on her face, the smile quickly faded. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, but the indignation and hurt were about to explode. "We need to talk, Jake," she said, her voice firm, but with a tremor that revealed the fragility of her emotional state. "Of course, what happened?" He straightened up, his gaze now serious, as if he knew something was wrong. She hesitated, but the image of the motel card in her mind encouraged her. "I found the motel card in your backpack. What do you have to say about that?" The question came out like a shot, sharp and direct. Jake seemed to lose color. "Sarah, I can explain. It's not what you think." He began to justify himself, but the words sounded hollow. "Then tell me, Jake, what else should I think? You hid this from me." Her tone of voice rose, and a few people nearby looked towards the couple. Sarah didn't care. She needed Jake to feel the gravity of the situation. "I never wanted you to find out like this. I was trying to get rid of that past." He hesitated, searching for words. "I love you, Sarah. Believe me." "Love? How can you say that after everything? You had a double life. You cheated on me." With each word, the pain turned into anger, and she felt the need to expel all the venom consuming her. "And that woman, Emily, what do you have to say about her?" Jake, now visibly shaken, lowered his head. "Emily, she's just a friend. You need to understand." "Friend? You want me to believe that's all? I saw you together, Jake, and every time you look at her, it's like I'm not there." The desperation in her voice was palpable, but Sarah no longer wanted to seem weak. "You need to be honest with me. What's going on between you two?" He sighed, revealing a weakness Sarah had never seen before. "I don't know how it all started, but I let myself get carried away. I thought I could have both, but I never thought you would find out." At that moment, the truth settled between them like an insurmountable chasm. Sarah felt the trust she once had in Jake disintegrate like dust in the wind. "I can't stay here anymore, Jake. Every word you say makes me feel more betrayed. I can't live like this anymore." "Sarah, please don't do this. I can change. I can fix things," he pleaded, his gaze now full of desperation. "You can't fix what's broken," she replied, her voice firm. "You broke me, and there's no turning back." The clarity she felt made her realize she no longer wanted that relationship full of lies. "I'm going to expose everything, Jake. Not just to you, but to all our friends. Everyone needs to know who you really are." Sarah's determination surprised her, but she didn't hesitate. It was time to free herself. "Sarah, don't do this. Think about the consequences," Jake exclaimed, but she wasn't swayed. "You should have thought about the consequences before you betrayed me, Jake. Now the truth needs to come out." With that, she turned and began to walk away. Each step she took felt like a weight lifted, a new freedom forming within her. As she walked away, Sarah felt a wave of empowerment. The scandal she was about to cause would change their lives forever, but most of all, it would free her from the chains Jake and Emily had placed on her heart. She was ready to start over, stronger and more determined than ever. As you reflect on the story we shared today, think about how you might be dealing with your own pain and challenges. We all face moments of betrayal and disappointment, but it's important to remember that these experiences don't define who we are, but rather how we choose to react to them. What lessons can you take from this story to transform your own life? Have you ever been through something similar? Share your experience in the comments, and if this story made you reflect, go ahead and click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you enjoyed what you heard now, you'll undoubtedly love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.